Hello, everybody. How's it going? Thanks again for the intro. I'm pretty excited to be here. Thanks, Frontend Nation, for having me. So, today I'm going to talk about what's hot on TresJS version 4. So I'm pretty excited. My name is Alvaro Sabu. I'm a DX engineer. Sorry, I didn't update on the website, but I just got this new role like a week ago. So I'm a developer experience engineer now. I live in Barcelona, Spain. I create content on Alvaro de Labs, mostly about 3D, Vue, Nox, Astro, and open source in general. As well as Alex, I have a blog and a portfolio, but I really need to write more articles there. You can always say hi on Alvaro Sabu on the socials. So before I start, at this point in time, I will hope that at least 30% of you might hear about TresJS. So you have heard that this is something that you can build 3D scenes in Vue, super realistic and such. And the other 70% will be amazed at the end of this talk. So what is TresJS? TresJS is a Vue custom renderer that allows you to create 3D experience in the web by using Vue components. It's called Tres. It's a Spanish word for tree, so it's on top of 3GS and is in reference of this library. How do I get started and play with it? You can add it with your package manager of choice, in my case pnpm, add a Tres core, and you also install tree as a pure dependency. Or you can straight away play on our single file component playground that you will see on the links. I will share the links afterwards, okay? But this is how the playground looks, and also you can check the code here. So yeah, pretty much Vue components and composables, right? So I'm here to talk about the version 4 because on the last year and a half, we have recollected a lot of feedback from the community. So we have users that were complaining about performance issues. I mean, we're talking about 3D, so we're creating 3D scenes with a lot of different effects and such in the browser, right? We had some requests about having on-demand rendering as part of these strategies to improve the performance. We have some type issues after the version 156 of 3GS, which is still the same in the version 164 of 3GS. Every time we update, there is a type change. So thanks for the patience about that. We had some memory leaks on route change, especially in Nox. We have event handlers in all of the TresJS components, but not in the primitives. We're going to see what primitives are in this talk. So TresJS version 4. The team and I put together all that feedback and start creating in February, I think, the V4 branch. So we wanted to tackle the on-demand rendering. We wanted to refactor the event store and the propagation logic of the events. We added event handlers to those primitives. We also added a reactive, well, I don't know, like the object prop on the primitives was plain and now it's reactive, so you can dynamically change it. We added better disposal of resources for memory management, especially for the memory leaks on route change. And at the end, this was a little rush, but after months of discussing with the core team about the UseLoop Compossible, we managed to make it happen with the V4. At the end, we also fix a lot of issues and bug fixes that with these new features. So let's talk about the first one, that is on-demand rendering. So until now, the render always render. Okay, so what does it mean? That we have a canvas and we are rendering 60 or 120 times per second. No matter if the scene is being updated, if there is an animation, if it's still. Okay, so of course, if we can avoid rendering that much and only render when it's necessary, the performance is going to be better. So here we have the Tres Canvas component, which is the wrapper component of your scene. And now there is a property that you can pass that is called render mode. So render mode will have three different possibilities. You can have always, which is the default one. You can have on demand, which is going to automatically invalidate the next frame on instance prop changes, context state changes, for example, if you resize the canvas, and if you use BIF for conditional rendering. So here I have a video because I was scared that my live coding was not going to happen, where I show what happens if you put the render mode. So here in the top, I have a little component that shows whenever it's rendering. So right now it's rendering all the time. But if we add the render mode on demand, you can see that now it only renders when it's necessary. So if I move the camera a little bit or zoom out and zoom in, then it's going to render. This is huge for us because it makes all it makes possible that if you want to create a website or an application with 3D and you want to target devices that might not be as performant as every developer, fancy MacBook or anything, you can improve the performance with this. We also have another choice, which is the manual invalidation, where we give you all the control that you need. So instead of doing it opinionated on demand, we provide you an invalidation here. So whenever you do an animation, you can use the invalidate to invalidate the next frame and then trigger a render. We also refactored the event store and the propagation logic. So until the V3, we had only click event, pointer move, pointer enter, and pointer leave. But thanks to our contributors, now in the V4, we have also right click, double click, pointer down, pointer up, wheel, and pointer miss it in case we want to check out whenever we click outside. So one thing that we didn't have, and it was quite important, was the event bubbling. So here the event bubbling works really different from how it works on the DOM. So we have a camera, and when we have objects in our scene, how it works under the hood is that TresJS creates a raycaster, which is an invisible line that goes through all those objects from the camera to what you're seeing. So it intersects all the objects and returns you back what objects have been intersect. And we do some logic or magic, to be honest, to know where you're clicking or not. But until now, you were kind of like adding event handlers to all the intersections. So what we add is a way to stop the propagation of events from the camera on. So when you add an event clicker, like an event handler, sorry, to any component like a trace mesh, you can now stop the propagation and avoid other components or other objects that are far from the camera to be triggered. A little bit like this. So here is a small video where you can see that if I click the cube, all the cubes beside are changing color, but in the top, I have a control for stop propagation. So if I try to do the same again, you can see that only the first cube is changing the color. So the event propagation has stopped. Let's talk now about primitives. And you probably trying to figure out what primitives are. And you're probably thinking about the man in a cave with a cute cat with long feet. But no, here primitives actually mean something else. Primitives are a way to programmatically create objects like you will do on vanilla 3GS and then add them to the scene graph by using the primitive object. So think of it like the similar of the component is in Vue, but for TresJS. So this is amazing because something that you can't import into your scenes are models. So you create something or you download it from internet, you can use one of the composables that we have in Cientos to load that object and then pass it to the scene graph and rendering right away. So this is an example of how I can upload a model of, in this case, the ugly naked bunny, and make animations with it. Without primitives, it will not be as easy. Then, between all the enhancements that we work on for the primitives, we added a reactive object prop. That means that I can set a ref and change the object that I'm passing to the primitive if I want to dynamically show one model or another. To give you an example here, I have two models. One is Aku Aku from Crash Bandicoot. If you're a PS1 gamer, you will know this. And the other one is the Blender Cube. So if I hover here and just change the toggle, I'm changing between two models with using the same primitive. This was not possible before the V4. We also add conditional rendering, meaning that the BIF directive that you used to on view will also work for these objects. So you can set a ref for the visibility of their object, and whenever it's visible or not, you can take it out from the scene graph. Then we added event handlers to the primitives. Before, it wasn't possible to click on a model and then get the event, but with all the improvements that we did for event handler, now it's possible. So you can add an add click or add context menu, pointer move, etc., and handle your events. Now let's talk about memory management, because when you're creating this kind of applications, like improving the performance and like calibrating it is really important. So we added an automatic disposal of resources when the component is unmounted. So TresJS is now more intelligent and say, hey, whenever you're unmounting the scene, let's dispose from the GPU and the CPU all the resources that we have on our scene. Then we added the possibility to manually dispose by exporting a utility method to do it manually, for example, for primitives. This frees CPU and GPU memory. Before, it was only the GPU memory, and all the reference in JavaScript were holding them. So that's the difference between CPU and GPU. Like normally, GPU is going to be all the programs for the materials, for the calculations, and the CPU is going to be the references in JavaScript. Now we're actually freeing both. We also had DevTools improvements. We launched it like 6 months ago, like a plugin for the DevTools to be able to check the scene and change the position of objects, inspect a little bit how it looks, if their camera is there and such. So we added the render info. Now it's available. So you are going to see the memory in kilobytes, also how many objects, how many calls are you doing to the GPU, how many triangles are in the scene to finely grain and improve your scenes. We also added the shader programs or the materials in a list, so you can see all the materials that you're using. And also we fix a bug that now makes it possible to search instances with the search bar on top. And last but not least, the new UseLoop Compossible. So until the V4, the recommended way to subscribe callbacks to the loop, because when you are showing on a scene, is rendering 60 frames per second or 120 times per second, depending on your device. So before we were using a composable called useRenderLoop whenever you wanted to subscribe to that event handler and then update the position of an object for animation. Okay, this was the old way. The problem was that there was no access to the state or the context, no possibility to order the callbacks. So assign a priority index like you will do, for example, if you want to update an object and then rendering and then calculating for physics, it was not possible. Also, there was no way to take over the render loop. There is a use case for post processing when you actually want to like annul the rendering from 3ds and take over with the Fed composer. That was not possible, and there was no way to pause the loop. So this is a really bad diagram that took us more than 3 months to take, and discussions in the core team member team. But at the end, we managed to create an API. And the idea of an API is that you have access to three different methods. One is on before rendering. Well, you can pass the callback and assign a priority. So this is going to tackle all the updates that you want to happen before rendering the scene. You can pass a negative index if you wanted to have it like faster. So think of this as the zeta index in CSS. So if you add negative numbers, the callback is going to happen first, then until infinite positive. Then we have the render where we render the scene with the camera and the objects. Now it's possible to override and take over the render loop by using the render method. The only thing that you need to pass is the callback. Then you might want to do post calculations for the next frame, for example, for physics or other methods. So similar to the on before render, we now have the on after render with the same parameters, callback and the priority. So this is how it looks in the code. You now use the UseLoop Compossible from TresJS core, and then you deconstruct to get the method, and you can animate your object between the callback that you can get there. So the takeover, the loop mode will look something like this. You have the render method, and then you can have access to the state. So you will be accessing the rendering, the scene, and the camera, and then you can handle it by yourself. And I don't know why it's not passing to the next one. Probably now. You can also register callbacks after rendering. So you can use the on after render to pass a callback to do after the rendering. And I need to pass them manually now. You can pass and resume the loop by using these two methods. Okay, so whenever you want to, for example, you have the canvas on your landing page and then you scroll and the canvas is no longer visible, you can pause the rendering and not updating it anymore. You also have the pause render and resume render. I said something wrong. The pause and the resume is only for the updates. So whenever you're animating objects, but it will still render. If you want to stop completely the rendering, you can use the pause render and the resume one. Last but not least, it's not part of the before, but it's something that we work on the last 6 months, is that we finally have translations for all these languages. So the documentation is available in English, Spanish, Chinese, German, French, and Dutch. We are also waiting for some other translations in Japanese and Polish. So if you want to contribute, please let us know. We also provide in a recipe book or like a cookbook with different use cases, so you can check out how you can build stuff like basic animation, how to use group, how to load image models and such. So what's next? Because I think I'm really short on time. So here is the updated roadmap. We are on the end of the Q2, so we already released the V4 2 weeks ago or something like that. We are now focusing on the rest of the ecosystem to upgrade it to the V4 because there are some breaking changes. We're working on the Cientos V4 to launch it at the end of this month, hopefully. And then we are going to launch the first stable version of the post-processing package. For the Q3 and Q4, we are excited because we are going to start the package of XR and VR, so virtual reality with TresJS and Vue, and hopefully physics, so we can do games with it. Thanks to all the contributors that makes TresJS possible. Without you, it wouldn't be. So thanks to you. You're the biggest support ever. Thanks to our sponsors as well, from TresJS and also my personal, for contributing and sponsor the project to make it happen. Thank you very much. And that's all for today.
Yay, thank you. And I would say, first question.
Yeah.
Have you and Sarah made friends yet? Because that was yesterday's Twitter post on hoping you and Sarah would make friends and that Sarah would check out Trace.
I saw the tweet yesterday. Got really excited. I haven't seen her talk yet, but I
Watch it.
already, yeah, I
Oh
already
my
pinged
gosh.
her.
You two would make a great duo on just like watching you two tinker away on things. I love both the way both of you present.
Thank you, thank you very much. Yeah, no, for sure. Like I will ping her to contribute together, and see what she builds. She told like she's gonna port some examples to view, so I'm pretty excited to see it.
Yeah, it'll be cool. So more of the questions we have. What does migration from V3 to V4 look like?
We try to make it as straightforward as possible. There are some things, especially if you use the render modes right now. If you're using also other packages from the ecosystem, they might not support it yet, so you're gonna run into issues. So, but we try to not create breaking changes at all. So the only breaking change is the event handler and the event bumbling. Now it's gonna work differently, but the composable that we create to replace the use render loop is optional. So you can still have the previous one without the benefits, but you should migrate to the new one.
Very cool. Let's see. Has TresJS made any partnerships with other libraries in Vue.js community? For instance, can we expect first-class support for TresJS in libraries like Vuetify and PrimeView?
That will be actually amazing. Like, no, we don't have any partnership yet. We are completely open source. Like, we haven't talked with anyone. But for sure, like if you are in the team of Utify and PrimeView and you would like to give support to 3D components, let me know. Like I'm up to the challenge. It actually sounds pretty cool. Like it will be amazing to have that.
Great idea, right? All
Yeah.
right,
Very good.
last question. What feature are you most excited about?
Oh, the on-demand rendering is huge, and also the composable, like the UseLoop Compossible wasn't going to make it to the before. We were going to launch it even like next year or something like that, but we really pushed it because it opened a world of possibilities by taking over the render loop, especially for gaming. Like we have a lot of users that want to use threads for gaming, which is what excites me the most. And without this feature, it was not gonna happen. So that's the one that I'm more excited.
Yay! That is very exciting. So perfect. Thank you, Alvaro, for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure.